Hi, I'm Khleif. Each and every week, I record an interview with a thought leader that I know you're going to get a ton of value from. Now, here on YouTube are the video versions of my podcast, Lifetime Cash Flow Through Real Estate Investing. Now, to make sure you get the latest information, please subscribe and hit the notification bell. Let's get started. Welcome to another edition of How to Build Lifetime Cash Flow Through Real Estate Investing. I'm Khleif, and I'm thrilled you're here. And I know you're going to get tremendous value from the gentleman we're interviewing today. His name is Mike Jordan, which is not the Mike Jordan you're thinking, but a very, very cool guy. He's a serial entrepreneur like I am. I mean, I've got his bio in my hand, and he started, at least I'm looking at a dozen different companies here. Got the shiny penny syndrome like I do. But he's also a force to be reckoned with in the multifamily space. Got 160 doors, has his own property management company in the southeastern Michigan area. And just real excited to dig into some things with him. Michael, welcome to the show, my friend.
Hey, Rod, thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it. And, it's an honor to be on your show as it's a podcast that I listen to on a regular basis, and I highly respect you, and you're a great educator.
Oh, thanks, brother. That's very kind of you to say that. So, let's go back and just talk about your real estate progression. I mean, I see a lot of other things on your bio that we could probably talk about in a whole nother session, but let's talk about how the real estate transitioned, because I think I'm sure you've got an interesting story in your transition from single family to multifamily.
Yeah, well, I started out in single family back years ago because, to me, growing up, you hear about rental homes, and that's the way to build wealth. And I actually started out by owning a construction company, getting some money together, and then went into building homes. And then while I was building homes, the market started to decline, and I was left with two new construction homes that didn't have debt on them, and then three homes that were on double lots. So I became an accidental landlord. And, becoming a landlord, I'm like, man, I love this thing. You got passive income coming in every month, as long as you put the right tenants in there and you take care of them and make sure that the homes are ready for them and the maintenance is taken care of. And throughout the years, I've dreamt of owning apartment buildings. And, I've always looked that way, and I've always wanted to be in that space. So I made relationships with, Hendricks and Partners at the time. I know they turned into Berkadia and Marcus and Millichap, some of the people there. But then I started coming across some deals, through the off market, and I took a look at them, and some of them met my needs for numbers and location and, the occupancy that I thought I would have. And the transition was quite easy because, it was just a lot of single family homes in one building. So that's how I looked at it. And I looked at it like there was also less headache because you don't have 100 hot water tanks spread out. You have, you got a utility room there with all your utilities and everything that, is protected, and camera systems throughout the building. And really, I fell in love with multifamily, and that's something that I see growing into, because I believe that that's a path of wealth and generational wealth for myself and my family.
Yeah, no question. Love it. So you let me circle back to something you said. You started building relationships with the Marcus and Millichap guys and the other brokers, large brokers. But then you went off market. What did you do to find these deals off market?
Well, it was actually some of these deals that were off market were by me networking with a lot of attorneys and also some city inspectors that we knew. And one day an attorney came to me and he said, "Hey, Mike, listen, I got this off-market deal. I've been going to city hearings, and the city is just not happy with the way the property is upkept, and the owners are having some issues and they want to sell." And immediately I said, "Where's the location?" They told me the location, and I went and took a look at it. I'm like, wow, this is just a no-brainer. So that was my first deal.
Nice. How many doors?
That one was 90 units.
Okay. And is your portfolio in Detroit? Is that where it is?
It's in Dearborn, Michigan. So Dearborn. It's right outside of Detroit. Mm-hmm. And the reason why, in single family, we always say location, location, location. Well, I felt that way about apartments too. So, I got this 90-unit building that's right behind where Ford Motors developing office space. So,
Wow.
this all clicked, and it's something I said, this is, the deal that I'm jumping into. And that was my first apartment deal, and it made tons of sense. And I think sometimes when you're dealing with an owner and you sit down with them and, they know the cap rates and where they should be at and everything. And when you sit down and negotiate properly and you have your facts right and they respect the fact that you know your numbers, you'll get to your number if they want to sell.
Nice, nice. So, did you end up raising money for that first deal? Did you syndicate it, or did you use your own cash? How'd you buy it?
So on that first deal, I actually used my own cash. I went to a small bank. I shopped around, asked a lot of people that were in the space. I said, "Hey, who's the best bank to use for apartment complexes?" And they gave me the name of a bank that's aggressive because they're a small bank and they want to build their portfolio versus a Chase or Bank of America or Wells Fargo. That's not so in our business.
Let me put an exclamation mark on what you just said. Guys, whatever market you're targeting, make sure you develop relationships with the smaller banks, not the BOA, Chase, Wells Fargo, Fifth Third, BB&T, none of those. You want to hit the local banks because relationships are so powerful. In fact, one of my first interviews was a guy in Michigan that was a young guy that bought $1 million property with bank financing for $5,000 down because he had a relationship with the banker, and the banker allowed the seller to carry a second. I mean, that's the power of those relationships. And you're obviously a relationship guy because you referenced, developing relationships with the brokers but banks don't overlook bankers. I've got a coaching student, Andrew, that did is doing $1.3 million deal, nothing down. Because with bank financing, because of the relationship, and it happens to be a good deal, and the bank will finance it. So, I just wanted to hammer that home. So let's talk
Rod,
about.
If I can add,
yeah, please.
To that, you think there's an important point that I could add to that. What I do with some of the banks that I make relationships with. And even if I have a great relationship with a particular bank and we're doing deals, it doesn't mean that I don't go out there and make more relationships, because I believe that, relationships are the key to success. And the more relationships you have, the more opportunities you have. And I believe that, when you show someone that you're integrous and you're professional and you know what you're doing, those relationships are like, they're gold. They really are. So what I do is I generally invite the bankers to come to our office. And I'll tell you, here's a little thing that I found throughout the years. The bankers that aren't interested in coming in your office, to the office, aren't really that hungry. They're not going to go to bat for you. They're not going to go, try to get you that deal that you want. The ones that are hungry will make an appointment with you and come to your office. Just 2 days ago, or just last week, I had a banker come in my office, and he's followed up with me 2 times on email and by text.
Love it. What a great way to filter them, buddy. I love it. Yes. That's a great tip.
So that's a good piece of advice. If they want to come to your office, if they want to meet you for coffee, they're hungry for business, and their higher ups are telling them, go out there and get the business.
And another thing I want to circle back to is, guys, you're looking for quality, not quantity. Break bread with them, have lunch with them, find out how many kids they have. I mean, make it personal. That's how you develop these relationships and make them very, very powerful relationships. And I love that filtering mechanism. Bring them to your office. Love that. And then once you start the relationship, it does not hurt to open an account there. Okay. They are relationship driven. They want to see, they'd like to see you have a bank account there. So throw some money there and let it sit there and start that process. But, okay, awesome. So, I know you did the transition from single family to multifamily, and why, same reason I did. But I know you've got, one of your skill sets is renovations, and, you've done it like me, you've done, I'm sure, thousands. I've done thousands, and you had a renovation company. That was one of your companies. So let's talk about some tips that you might give my listeners if they're doing a reposition, or even in a house. If they're going to go out there and they're not going to do the work themselves, what would you tell them to protect them? Because you hear lots of horror stories around this. A contractor leaves with the money or doesn't finish the job or takes forever or whatever. What's some tips would you give my listeners in this area?
Well, the first thing is renovation is something that I hear about all around the country that is the most difficult part of the business for most investors, rightfully so, because you're dealing with a lot of different variables. So one of the tips that I would give any investor, whether it be in single family or multifamily, because we are heavily in single family. So I always will be in single family, but I also made the transition to multifamily, which I want to build that portfolio too, because I love both spaces. But I think the multifamily space is just one where it's incredible. Right. But going back to the renovations, what I would do is I would have multiple renovation contractors that you vet prior to you buying. And the reason why you want to do that is you want to know who are you going to give you a quote prior to you buying the project. And you don't just get it from one guy, you get it from 3 different people. You also want to have your professional trades, which are your HVAC, your plumbing, your electrical contractors, in line too, because those guys, if you're going to GC a project, that's where you're going to save your money by doing it yourself. And to me, the best general contractor is yourself, because construction is based on logic. So you got to build those crews up. And a lot of people telling me, how do you build those crews up? They're so hard to find. There's no good contractors. It's not true. You go to your local meetup groups, you meet people there, you ask them, who do they use? You find an electrician, you ask him, does he know a plumber? You find a plumber, you ask him, does he know an HVAC guy? So that's where I started out the conversation talking about relationships. Well, renovations is based on relationships too. But a very important tip is have those contractors and those professional trades ready, and have them ready to write a scope of work for you, so you understand your budget and your costs.
Right. Let me stop you for 1 second. For 1 second, because I want to hammer home something you just said. Then I want to talk about scope of work for sure. But guys, in this business, everything is referrals. You don't go in a phone book anymore. You don't go on Google to find the best plumber, electrician, banker, anybody. Frankly, you should be asking your brokers, who's the best small banker you've done work with that's aggressive, that's hungry. Ask the banker who the best brokers. But in this renovation space, like he just said, make sure you're asking for referrals. You go to your meetup, find out who they like that does plumbing or electrical or HVAC or whatever, or even drywall and framing and real remodel work, and get referrals. That's how you're going to find the best people. And you should always be asking who they know that does a good job. So I just wanted to hammer that home. Okay. So get a scope of work. Let's start there again.
Yeah. When you get a scope of work and you meet these guys, but go look at their project, go look at a job that they're doing to see their quality. When they know you're on top of it, they're going to respect you that much more, and they're going to deliver the right project the right way. So there's another step that you want to go look at their work. You want to check their background. Just because Bob the plumber introduced me to Jason the electrician, it doesn't mean that I don't go and take the step of looking at their work and making sure that, they do quality work, and, the city thinks highly of them too. So that's another step that I believe that should be taken during the process.
Do you ever ask inspectors at the city, what they think of somebody? Yeah, I do too. Okay,
absolutely. Good. So there's, it's public record on who's doing work. So you could actually go to city and request a list of contractors that are doing work for that city. And, during my due diligence process, when I'm doing a project, if it's someone I don't know, I want to see, their work. I want to see that they've done work with many cities. And I want to actually sometimes what I do, I maybe this is going a little far, but I do a background check. Because
no, it's not going back, not far at all. It's not hard to do, and it's smart. I mean, you're investing a ton of money and time with somebody. Man, you better, they can make or break you, especially if it's a big one.
Yes,
so,
absolutely, absolutely. And people do, they'll go to Home Depot to the pro desk. That's another good idea, or call the electrical supply store. But I urge everyone that, like Rod's saying, business is built on relationships. And if you get into a project with the wrong guy, you're going to have so many headaches. And then your taste might come, you might have a bad taste in overall investing, you might say, oh, it's too hard and, there's
Right.
no contractors. We don't want you to get there. We want you to do your proper due diligence so you don't get into a problem.
Right. And if your first deal is a train wreck with your, with a, big remodel, there probably won't be a second deal because it's
Right.
so painful to go through it. Ask me how I know, you just don't want to have that happen. And yeah, you mentioned the pro desk. That's another good tip. Lowe's and Home Depot goes,
Yes.
Who's the best electrician, who's the best
Yes.
plumber, who's the best framer, and they'll tell you, you start a relationship with them and just shoot the bull and ask them. And you can go to your, like you said, electrical supply house, plumbing supply house, HVAC supply house, and start a relationship there. And then ask them who really runs a tight ship, who really does a good job. And they'll tell you.
These tips can not only save you time, but thousands of dollars, hundreds of thousands, millions, because imagine if you get deterred away from the general business of doing a renovation. That costs you over tens of years or a lifetime, millions of dollars in possible passive income. So I urge you to do your due diligence on anyone you work with in the construction realm.
Love it. Love it. So then you do your scope of work.
Yep.
And how do you hold them accountable and to progress through the process for us?
Yeah, so what we do is we write a scope of work. If we had an architect on a project where it was large enough, where we're moving enough walls, where there's 50%, walls being moved and whatnot, we get an architect, or the city needs an architect involved. If there's an architect, what's happening there is the architect, generally what I do is I have them help us with our scope of work to have the best layout possible, to make an open concept, whatever it may be. If I don't have an architect, what I'm doing is I'm going in there myself with my trades and walking the building and asking suggestions from them. Because I want someone to check me. So I know that it's always important to have many eyes on things. And prior to them giving you a quote, they're going to point things out because it's just going to go on their scope of work and they're going to do the work. And I'm going to determine whether I should change that flooring or not. I'm going to determine whether, that bathroom needs to be gutted or not. So I always go do a walkthrough with the team that I've established of contractors and professional trades. And I write that scope of work up room by room from the exterior into the interior. And that's what I do.
High level of detail, guys. You look at the floors, you look at the walls, you look at the ceilings, you look under the cabinets, you look at every little piece of this thing so you don't miss anything, because the other thing that'll kill you is a change order or adding things on. That's, you can get really screwed when that happens. So,
yes.
Okay, awesome. And then let me ask you this. How do you hold them accountable? Is there anything you do to hold your contractors accountable where they don't run off with your money? I mean, obviously you've done your homework, so you're usually okay. But, many of them want money to get started. How do you hold them to the timetable? Or are there any things that you do that you suggest?
Yeah. So number one, we have a written contract with every single person, every contractor and every professional trade we work with.
Right.
And, what we do is we set up a draw schedule. Mm-hmm. And we don't like to pay anyone prior to them doing work. We want to see them doing work and then giving them draws as they progress. If they are resistant to that, that may be someone that I don't want to deal with. So that's a conversation that I have up front prior to me even going to the project with them. So having a contract with them, give them draws during the progress of the work. Mm-hmm. Another accountable item that we use is if they're licensed. So if they're licensed, that's a very important item. They're a licensed contractor. They have to uphold their license and do things properly. And if I vetted them right and I have the right contract, and I'm ahead of them on money, things are going well. But, if I show them mutual respect and that there's going to be many projects after this, and if I even let them know, hey, listen, here's another little tip that I'll tell you. Hey, you're going to be on, in some videos, and you could go out there and promote your company name. So I tell them, you do a great job. I'm gonna post your name in some of the Facebook groups. So those are little things that actually manage them a little bit more. So it's very important. I want to do everything possible to make sure that they're on time and they're doing things properly.
Yeah, no, I love it. And back to the draw schedule for a minute. You just be really careful getting ahead of these guys, because that's when things happen, when work stops and they spend the money and then they're in trouble and that's so like he said, ideally you're paying after the work is done, but you give them a schedule. They don't have to wait for the whole job to be done. You can draw it out but you try to position it in your favor so that there's plenty of money left at the end for them to finish. And I've had situations where what were once great contractors, they degenerate and they have issues and they become a problem.
Well, let's face it, a lot of these contractors are smaller contractors.
Right.
Because if we're going to a contractor with an office and, this big building and whatnot, there's all your profits are gone from that. So we use these small contractors. But what we do is when we use these small contractors, we cut up the draws. So we don't say that we're going to pay you a third, a third, a third. What we do is we actually cut them up into about 10 to 15% draws, because it also gives us more interaction with the contractors by being on site, walking through with them, being on the same page, and establishing that relationship. So that's another tip that
I like it. Yeah, I like it. I mean, it's more work, but it's much safer, and you're interacting, and you're involved, and they've got more regular revenue, so they're happy about it. That's a great tip. Now, do you ever have penalties if they don't finish on time? Like sometimes I'll do a daily penalty.
Yeah, what I do is I ask them how long the project's going to take. So we come up with a time frame that they give us how long it's going to take, even though we know roughly how long it's going to take. And I usually tell them, okay, listen, I'm going to add, 2 or 3 weeks to the project, or even a month.
Right.
But I also tell them, I say, depending on how much the project value is and what, what we're doing with the project, I tell them, hey, we meet this budget, I'm going to give you a 3% bonus on the overall contract. It's well worth it. Some people might look at it like, why are you throwing money away? No, you're not. You're actually motivating someone to the project. You're building a relationship, and you're getting your project completed, done as fast as possible.
Love it. Love it. So it's not just the stick, it's the carrot. Love it. No, that's great advice. Let's shift gears for a minute and talk about property management, because I know that's another skill set of yours. And you own a property management company like I do, and in the Detroit area or the southeastern Michigan area. And so, what are some tips, some high-level property management tips you might give one of my listeners that maybe just bought a 4-plex, for example, or an 8-plex, and they're going to do it themselves because they're just getting rolling? What are some tips that you'd give them?
Well, I would say that, first of all, what I do with our properties, that, there's 2 kinds of properties you can buy. You can buy a tenanted property, or you can buy a property that's untenanted. So if you want me to go about it both ways, I could talk about it both ways. So
sure. I mean, let's talk about an occupied property first.
Sure,
what are some of the steps?
So with an occupied property, prior to me buying that property, I want to see the rent roll. I want to make sure that they're paying on time. I want to see the leases. I want to see the application. So I want to see who's in my property. Based on who's in my property, their payment history, what they're paying is based on, that'll adjust my offer. Yeah, because I might have more risk with them not having a great application. So what I want to do is I want to figure in that they may be evicted. Okay. So I also want to, take a look at the property and say how much deferred maintenance is in there. So if I took over that property, that 4-plex tomorrow, and the whole 4-plex became vacant, I want to know how much it would cost me to go in there and renovate it. So I'm doing my numbers according to me buying the property tomorrow and everyone stopping paying. So if they don't do that, that's a plus. So I'm going in with the worst case scenario number based on the applications, the rent roll, and their and also their payment history.
Love it. So
now, on the flip side, if I'm going to renovating and putting tenants in the property, what I'm doing is I'm looking for a tenant with no evictions, and that can get tricky. And let me tell you why it can get tricky. Most of us use CoreLogic, and we look at CoreLogic, and they'll show you a clean record and thumbs up on it and whatnot. Well, CoreLogic is delayed. Data is delayed that goes into the city. So if you really want to know about a tenant, You want to call their landlords. You want to talk to their references. You want to even if you have a virtual assistant, which we have several virtual assistants. What we do is we do a deep dive. What we do is we find out, we get the previous landlord's name and number. We call them, and we get the address that they lived at. Then we verify in public records that that owner really owns that property. You know, so then you're going to see if they're lying to you, they're not going to be a good tenant. Not saying that every tenant is, you know.
We see that we used to see that all the time. Yeah. And, you know, in fact, we discounted single, you know, if we weren't calling a property management company, if it was just a single owner, we would discount the validity and go at it with skepticism. And we would do the same thing. You just look up the property to see who owns it, see if they actually own the thing, you know.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. So that's the first thing. I want to look at their eviction history. I want to look at their previous landlord references. I want to look at their pay history. How much do they make? And I want to see actual pay stubs. So I want the pay stubs that I can call and verify their employment with that company. Because nowadays, people with the computers and technology, they could rigmarole some false statements, and we don't want to do that. I want to see a bank statement with some money in there that they'll have to put for the down payment and the security deposit, or for the first payment security deposit. And I want to make sure they have a month and a half security deposit, which Michigan law says is the max you can take, and the first month down. So that's my total tenant.
That's heavy duty, but a month and a half security and the first month. No, you're not doing the last month though. Okay, you're not doing the last month. Okay.
Actually,
I was thinking,
in Michigan, it's illegal to do that. So we're doing 1.5 months security deposit and 1 month rent down.
Okay. Now, guys, we're talking about C properties and lower here. If you pull a credit report and it's an 800 and they've got a job that you verified, you don't have to go to this level of detail, but you know, like you, I've had tons of C and even D properties, and you've got to go to this level of detail when you do that, and really dig deep, because you're better off to sit empty than you are to get the wrong person in.
You took the words out of my mouth. I mean, our forte is C and B properties. That's where we make our money. We make our money in C and B properties. We don't do D. We don't do A because the cap rate's not there for the A. The D, we don't want to deal in war zones. But like Rod said, I mean, there's a level of detail that people do and don't want to go to. But, you know, I mean, if you just look on, if you look at their previous landlord references, and, you know, credit a factor. I look at it like reasonable credit. I don't need someone with 800 credit. I mean, they wouldn't be renting, or there's not going to be many tenants with 800 credit. So I just don't want them to have utilities that are behind, or payments that show
or judgments for past landlords. Those are the big ones. Utilities and judgment for past landlords. Exactly. If you see medical bills, no big deal.
Exactly.
But it's the other things. Yeah, I totally agree. Now, I just had a thought and it escaped me. You know, and then when you do your lease up process with one of these new residents, once they pass muster, describe what you do. Are there any nuances that you do, that you like to do to maximize a good experience for both parties?
There's actually something I came up with a while ago, and it's a one-page document, and it's we call it the notice of consequences, consequences of a potential eviction. That's what it's called. And our attorney wrote it up, and it talks about how it's all facts about how if you get evicted, you know, it affects your credit, it affects your ability to rent. And what we do is we have them sign that, initial it, and what we do is, you know, that's just an additional item that is a reminder that, hey, outside of the lease that we signed, here's the consequences of what can happen if you don't perform. And that really works because, we have a really high success rate with collections. We're between 95 and 97% a month. And then that 3 to 5%, we eventually get, some of that, and we'll have our 2% eviction rate that just happens overall.
It just happens.
Sure. So, we felt that when you're asking me that question, that's a little document. It didn't take us much time to come up with, and it really gives them some light on how they can hurt themselves.
Yeah, they many of them don't know they're totally screwing themselves if they have an eviction on their record. And another thing that we do is, especially in the C properties, is we will actually highlight a few things in the lease. And we'll talk about, hey, here's what you can expect from us. You're going to get a clean place, a safe place. If you have a legitimate maintenance request, operative word is legitimate maintenance request, we are going to fix it right away, okay?
Absolutely.
Now, here's what we expect from you. You're not going to have a trashy place. You're not going to disturb the neighbors, and you're going to pay the rent on time. And regretfully, if you don't pay, by the 5th, you'll get an eviction notice. By the 15th, you'll get the formal eviction notice, and you'll be out that month. And just having that conversation verbally is very, very powerful. Do you agree?
Oh, no doubt about it. I mean,
yeah.
I'll tell you that conversation, along with even a monthly newsletter that you drop, with an email blast saying, hey, we want, to our tenants that, we would like to help you improve your credit. If you're interested, here's a credit counselor that can help you improve your credit. Little things like that go a long way, because you're reminding them that it's important to pay your bills, pay them on time. And even sometimes there's homeownership classes which some nonprofits run, sending out there a newsletter and saying there's an upcoming, homeownership course. Those are little things that go a long way. I mean, they look at it, and some people appreciate it, and they say, you know what, they're paying their rent anyway, but they appreciate it. And, it's just, to me, it's good karma. You're trying to do right by someone, giving them, educating them, and it just comes back around.
Yeah, no question. No question. Anything you can do to generate goodwill with your residents is critical. Once they're in, we were talking about up to the point of getting them in, but once they're in, you want to do everything within your power to minimize turnover, because the highest expense in this business is turnover.
Oh,
and
yeah.
So,
absolutely. Rod, sometimes we'll have someone come in and they'll pay a $25 application fee. Here's a quick little funny story.
Yeah.
And they'll come in and they'll pay a $25 application fee, and they'll get denied because we have a process. They'll get denied because something on their record. And, they'll go on and they'll call and they'll complain, or they'll write a review that, this company's taking $25 away from us, and they're getting rich off of that or whatever. So what I tell my property managers to do, I say, hey, listen, when someone complains about the $25 that we took to run their application, call them back, write a check for them, and give it back to them. So this business is filled with a lot of variables, and you got to really know how to deal with it. What's the battles you want to take on, and what ones you don't want to take on. And to me, doing people right, you're not going to have many battles. And if there are, handle the right way in an integrous manner, and you'll be fine.
The beautiful thing about the real estate business, well, you're speaking to integrity and doing the right thing, which is important in every aspect of your life. Sure. But the beautiful thing about real estate is there's just hardly anything you can't fix with a check. And that's what I love about this business. Truly, it's just the way it works. And whenever you do the right thing and you give back and you're here on your own, you have nothing to sell. You're here just to add value. And that's why you're so hugely successful, because you're just out here adding value, man. And that
I'm passionate about it. I really am. To me, I just want people to know that you could achieve anything you want to achieve. And, to me, you have to be a sponge. You have to learn, and you have to want it. It's just like anything in life. To me, if I want to lose some weight, I got to go to the gym and I got to eat right. If you want to be successful, you got to follow rules. And those rules are based on integrity, doing things the right way. And, I love when someone, when we have a check and I say, hey, what's this check for? And they're like, well, it's for a security deposit. We're giving back this person their security deposit because their home is, in great shape. Yeah. I love that,
Sure.
But I see so many property management companies out there that don't do that. They unrightfully take someone's money. So to me, doing things right in integrity, you become a magnet. People want to be around you, and deals come your way.
No question. No question. Anything you give back tenfold.
Absolutely.
Well, listen, brother, you've added a ton of value.
Thank you, Rod.
And I can see why you're on podcasts regularly, because you truly add a ton of value. It's been my absolute pleasure to meet you, and I'm certain that our paths will cross, I'm sure, again in the very near future. Thanks.
Well, thanks. Rod, it's a real pleasure to have spoken to you. I've listened to you a lot. You're a great educator.
Thanks, buddy.
Great person. And to me, it's it's an honor to be on your podcast, talking to you. And I look forward to listening to your podcast for many years to come.
Oh, thank you, brother. That's kind of you to say. Take care, my friend.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Have a good day.
You too.
Thank you for listening to the Lifetime Cash Flow Through Real Estate Investing podcast. If you've enjoyed the show, please take a minute to visit iTunes and leave your comments. For more resources or to connect with us further, please visit our website at rodkhleif.com. Tune in next week for our next show.